Hey. Welcome to a world of laughter, learning, and entertainment. Thank you for joining us today as we dive into IAR-80. The IAR-80 was a Romanian World War II low-wing monoplane, all-metal monocoque fighter and ground attack aircraft. When it first flew, in 1939, it was comparable to contemporary designs being deployed by the airforces of the most advanced military powers such as the Hawker Hurricane and FI. Production problems and lack of available armament delayed entry of the IAR-80 into service until 1941. It remained in frontline use until May 1945. As we move forward, let's uncover the untold stories and fascinating intricacies of development. In order to ensure that the Royal Romanian Air Force ARR could continue to be supplied with aircraft in time of war, the government subsidized the creation of three major aircraft manufacturers in the ERS and ERS. The first was Societe pentru Exploatări Tennis SET, which was formed in Bucharest in 1923. Next came Industria Aeronautic România, which set up shop in Brașov in 1925. Finally, there was Întreprinderea de Construcții Aeronautice Românești ICAR, which was founded in Bucharest in 1932. In 1930, the Romanian government issued specifications for a new fighter. Although the government was not anticipating bids from its own aircraft industry, IAR produced several prototypes in response to the tender. The contract was eventually won by the Polish PZL. The ARR purchased 50 of a modified version called the PERB, all of which were delivered in 1934. A second contest was also fought between the newer IAR-14 and PZL designs, and once again the PZL design won a contract for another 50 aircraft. Although IAR's own designs had not entered production, they nevertheless won the contracts to build Pulse and Gnome-Roanchik engines under license. As a result of these and other license contracts, the company had enough money to fund a design studio even if its designs never went into production. Despite losing to PZL, an IAR design team led by Ion Grosu continued work on fighter designs. He was convinced that the low-wing design of the IAR-24 represented a better design than the PZL gull-wing design, which was often referred to as the Polish wing. Once again, the team studied the new PZL fighter looking to incorporate its best features into a new aircraft, and the result was the IAR-80. Brace yourself for a captivating discussion on design as we explore its nuances and implications. Description: low-wing monoplane fighter with conventional control surface layout. Fuselage: the fuselage was circular in cross-section, turning to egg-shaped behind the cockpit where it incorporated a ridgeback. The rear fuselage layout and the engine cowling were based on the Polish PZL. Wings: the wings were tapered with rounded tips, the trailing edge angled very slightly forwards. Small flaps ran from the fuselage to a point about along the span, where the ailerons started and extended out to the rounded wingtips. Other details: a bubble canopy was fitted, sliding to the rear to open, providing excellent visibility except over the nose due to its rearward position. A conventional tailwheel landing gear was used, with the main gear wide set and retracting inward, with a non-retractable tail skid. The semi-monocoque tail was copied directly from the PZL. The fuselage from the engine back to the cockpit was new, consisting of a welded steel tube frame covered with duralumin sheeting. The wings were mounted low and were of the same design as those used on the early IAR-24, which had competed with the PZL. According to an urban legend, the wing profile was taken directly from the Italian Savoia Marchetti bomber in service with the ARR at the time, as the design team lacked the time for wing section studies. As a result, the profile was less favorable for higher speeds, but gave the aircraft more maneuverability. This is false, as the contract for the SMUB license was signed on October 1, 1938, roughly 1 year after the IAR-80 prototype was completed. The cockpit's interior, instruments, and gun sight were imported from foreign suppliers. This effort to aggregate a fighter from various sources was a result of the last-minute demands for a frontline fighter. The initial IRs were fitted with iron sights. Starting with the 21st aircraft, these were replaced by Gauss-Gram reflector sights which were manufactured under license by Entrepreneurie Optikramen as the Tellerflix gun sights. A Luftwaffe major who tested it in March 1941 had this to say about the IR-80. In the upcoming section, we'll be shining a light on prototypes. Work began on the IR-80 prototype in late 1937, originally with an open cockpit and the 870 IR-5 engine, which was a licensed Nomchikai Mistral Major. The prototype was completed slowly, and first took to the air in April 1939. Test flights of the prototype were impressive. The aircraft could reach 510 at 4,000 m, service ceiling of 11,000 meters with the ability to climb to 5,000 meters in 6 minutes, which was respectable at the time, though not up to the contemporary Supermarine Spitfire or Messerschmitt 109 fighters. In comparison, the PZL-Pi was almost 450 lighter, yet over 80 slower with the same engine. The IR-80 also proved to be enjoyable to fly and was maneuverable. A number of minor problems turned up during the prototype phase and were dealt with over the next year. To improve power, the design was updated to mount the newer 930 version of the K3. However, this engine was slightly heavier than the K, which required the rear fuselage to be stretched to move the center of gravity back into the proper position. The extra space in the fuselage allowed the fuel tanks to be increased in volume to 455 L. The wing was also enlarged and the tail was revised to eliminate the bracing struts. A side effect of this extreme rearward position was that the pilot had even worse forward visibility while taxiing than most other tail draggers. To address this somewhat, the pilot's seat was raised slightly and a bubble canopy was added. The updated prototype was tested competitively against the Heinkel He-112, which had arrived in Romania as the start of a potentially large order. Although the He-112 was more heavily armed with 2 machine guns and 220 cannon, the AR ordered 100 IARs in December 1939 while only 30 HERs were accepted. The government in Bucharest ordered another 100 IARs in August 1940. Further orders for batches of 50 IARs followed on 5 September 1941 and 11 April 1942, then another 100 on 28 May 1942, to be followed by 35 of the IAR development in February 1943, with a further 15 in January 1944. Let's now zoom in on IR-80 and uncover the hidden gems that lie within. Production of the IR-80 started immediately, although the armament proved to be a serious problem. The prototype had mounted only 2 Belgian-made Fabric National 7.92 machine guns, a licensed modification of the Browning Cal. This armament was not heavy enough against modern aircraft, and the production model was expected to mount 6. The German invasion of Belgium in 1940 suspended the supply from FN, and there was no suitable replacement. The first aircraft began production in January 1940, and by 10 July the first IR-80 took flight, followed by the second on 19 July. The first 5 aircraft were ready to be delivered in November 1940, with the first batch of 20 being delivered by the middle of February. By April, all 50 initially ordered IRs were delivered. The armament supply remained inadequate, so production models only carried 4 guns. The initial batch of fighters was well received by the Romanian pilots, but they found the aircraft underpowered and lacking firepower. In order to address this, the aircraft mounted the 960 IV engine in the 21st through 50th examples, but the firepower concern could not be resolved at the time. The time has come to unravel the secrets behind IR and gain a deeper understanding. By April 1941, the Romanians were firmly in the German sphere, and as a result the Germans released more FN guns for their use. These were quickly installed, and the resulting ER model finally mounted the original complement of 6 guns. Armored glass in the windscreen, seat back armor, and a new gun sight were also added at the same time, along with the newer 1025 gear engine. The extra engine power proved to be more than the fuselage structure was designed to handle, and it had to be reinforced with a duralumin belt just behind the cockpit in the first 95 series aircraft built before the fuselage could be modified. Although the IAR had a more powerful engine, the added weight of the guns, ammunition and armor plating reduced the top speed slightly to 316 miles per hour. Nevertheless, the new model was clearly an advancement, and the model replaced the earlier one on the assembly line, starting with the 51st airframe. 8 of these had been completed in time for the invasion of the Soviet Union on 22 June 1941. FN guns remained in short supply, so throughout late 1941 and early 1942 guns were stripped from pulls and observation aircraft for use in the airs. As we progress through this video, let's shift our attention towards IRB and uncover its hidden depths. Combat over the Soviet Union proved that even 6 of the FN guns still lacked punch, and once again firepower was increased, with 13.2 FN machine guns taken from Romanians were installed in the IAR-80 in a new lengthened wing. The result was the IAR-URB, which also introduced new radios, an area where the aircraft had previously been weak. A total of 55 of the new design were completed, including 20 airframes which were originally intended to be IARs. These last 20 were thus able to carry a 50 kg bomb or a 100L drop tank under each wing. The entire series were delivered between June and September 1942. As we progress, let's shine a spotlight on IAR and examine its intricate interplay within our topic. As the fighter model was converting from A to B series with the addition of the 13.2 guns, likewise the 81 model was upgraded in the same fashion, creating the IAR ear. The only distinguishing feature between the URB and the ear was the centerline bomb rack, and both were built on the same assembly line. The first order for ours was cancelled and the airframes were instead delivered to fighter units as URBs. Efforts to obtain the Ju-87 dragged on, so a second batch of IARs was ordered in May 1943 to replace losses. Once again fate intervened, and the Germans released the Ju-87 for delivery before the batch could be completed. Like the first batch, these 10 airframes were delivered as fighters. In this section, we'll be peeling back the layers of IAR to reveal its true essence. The supply of the 13.2 guns was clearly limited, and in a further attempt to increase the firepower of the design, the Romanians signed a deal with Ikaria in Germany for a supply of 20 mg cannon. These were licensed version of the Swiss Oerlikon FF, which had been in use in various German aircraft. The new gun also required a redesign of the wing. Initially 60 IAR-URBs were intended to be dive bombers, but these were delivered without the centerline bomb rack as fighters and designated IAR. After the first 10 were completed, self-sealing tanks were added along with improved seat-back armor. The first 10 were delivered in December 1942 and the entire order was completed by April 1943. In this segment, we'll be unraveling the complexities of IAR-81 and exploring its multifaceted nature. The ARR had intended to replace its light strike and dive bomber aircraft for some time when the war opened in 1941. The first role was to be filled by the IAR-37 and later 38 and 39 models, but the plan was to fill the second role with the Junkers Ju-87. Once again the Germans deferred and the ARR was left searching for a design. The modification of the existing IAR-80 as a dive bomber was seen as a reasonable option, easier than designing an entirely new aircraft, as well as having obvious production benefits. The result was the IAR-81, a minor change to the IAR-ER models that were then in production, adding a hinged bomb cradle under the centerline to throw a 225 kg bomb clear of the propeller. Many dive bombers used a similar system. Delivery consisted of a shallow dive from about 3,000 to with the speed around 470 km. Pilots disliked the aircraft, as the drag from the bomb cradle significantly hampered performance. 50 were ordered in mid-1941, but after 40 had been delivered, 50 kilograms bomb racks were added under each wing. The wing racks could also mount hull-drop tanks, allowing the 81 to be used as long-range fighters. In the upcoming portion, we'll be dissecting IARC to gain a comprehensive understanding of its implications. The final stage in the IAR's wartime history was the C. This version changed the guns once again, this time to the Mauser MG, which was replacing the MG in German service and had just been released for Romanian use. The order for the C was placed in May 1942, predating the second order of the hours. The first order for 100 airframes was delivered, like all of the prior updates to the 81 series, with the centerline bomb rack removed to be used as fighters. An additional order for 35 was placed in February 1943, and then another 15 in January 1944. These aircraft were primarily to replace losses in earlier models, while production of the FERG ramped up. In the following segment, we'll be examining IAR in greater detail. By 1944, the ARR fighter units included examples of EA, B and Celsius models, as well as 81 ERCs. In order to upgun the earlier fighters as well as simplify logistics and maintenance, an upgrade program was started in mid-1944 to bring all existing airframes to the armament suite of 2 MG December 30, 2024 and 2 FNRs. The resulting A and B models of the ATMs would become them and respectively, although at this point there were no dive bombers in use. It is unclear how many conversions were completed. Moving ahead, let's uncover the hidden gems within IAR and discover their significance. IARs remained in service until 1949, when they were replaced by LARs and ILs. Those airframes with the lowest hours were modified by removing a fuel tank in front of the cockpit and adding a second seat, resulting in a trainer designated the IAR. These were used for only a short time before being replaced by Yaks and Yaks in late 1952. Let's now shift our focus to further development and explore the ways in which it shapes our perspective. IAR realized that the Mistral Major was at the limits of its development potential even by the middle of 1941, when the EA model reached the same ultimate output as the original known versions. An ongoing program to fit the IAR-80 with a more powerful engine had been in the works for most of the design's lifetime, but this proved to be a fruitless endeavor. The most obvious choice for a new engine would have been the BMW 801 used in the Focke-Wulf 190. This engine produced a full 600 more power, and although it was heavier, it was of roughly the same size as the C. IAR engineers estimated that a BMW-powered IAR-80 would have a maximum speed of at least 600 km. But the Germans were unable to supply the engine as every example coming off the line was needed for installation in a German airframe. Licensed production was likewise out of the question. The engine production was in the midst of being ramped and the demand was so great that not even one set of jigs could be spared. In the spring of 1941, IAR-80 number 13 was fitted with a Daimler-Benz DBER engine borrowed from a FI. A flight test was carried out on 21 April 1941, but due to the strong vibrations, the pilot barely managed to bring it to the ground. Development was abandoned after this test flight, and was never flown again. Other tests were carried out with a 1,475 PS Daimler-Benz DBE fitted to IAR number 326 in the summer of 1943. According to the test reports, the aircraft's performance was greatly improved. However, due to difficulties in producing the engine and the Germans not having engines for sale, the project did not materialize. Prepare yourself for an in-depth analysis of operational history in this section. When Operation Barbarossa started, the IAR-80 equipped ISK 41, 59 and 60 of Gruppe 8 Vento 8th Fighter Group, part of the Gruppe Arien de Lucht GAL. that were tasked to support the Romanian 3rd and 4th Armies deployed at the southern flank of the Eastern Front. 8th Group was the only unit assigned a pure fighter role, while 5th and 7th Groups, equipped with German aircraft Heinkel Heers and Messerschmitt Fers, were employed primarily as fighter bombers and bomber escorts. On 22 June 1941, during the first day of the offensive, the IAR-80 patrols had their baptism of fire, achieving a single aerial victory claimed by Sub-Lieutenant Aviation Mihailescu 60 Vento, a future ace during 4 separate air combats. However, at least 4 IAR's force landed with battle damage, while another 2 suffered engine trouble. By the end of 1941, 20 IAR December 30th, 2024 had been lost in combat or accidents. During 1942, the Romanian aviation industry reached its highest output so that the Royal Romanian Air Force could be re-equipped as follows: ISK 47, 48 and 52 Grupal 9 Vento, ISK 43, 44 and 50 Grupal 3 Vento and ISK 41, 42 and 60 Grupal 8 Vento received the new IAR. ISK 53 also replaced its Hurricanes with the IAR, while Grupal 6 Bopi bombardment and Pica bombing ray equipped with the IAR-81. In June 1942, the operational IAR fighter forces on the Eastern Front, combined into the Flotilla 2 Vento, consisted of Grupal 8 Vento, commanded by General East Pavlescu, and included Iskrila 41, Iskrila 42 and Iskrila 60 with 12 IARs each. During the Battle of Stalingrad, on 12 September, the 8th Fighter Group's IAR along with the 7th Fighter Group's Fers claimed to have shot down 7 Yuks, but they lost 2 IARs. Grupal 8 moved at the end of September to Karpoka, joining Grupal 7, equipped with Fers. On 12 and 13 December, Grupal 6 used its IARs to support the German counterattack by the Panzergruppe half of the Heeresgruppe Don from Kotelnikovo towards Stalingrad. In the summer of 1943, the OR's IARs were transferred to Romania for air defense duties, where they were used in combat against the United States Air Force. USAAF attacks were directed at the oil refineries installation around Ploieti, in particular. On 1 August 1943, the IAR-80 faced the consolidated B-24 Liberator heavy bomber for the first time. There were 178 Bs from 9th USAAF, part of Operation Tidal Wave. The IAR-Erbs of Iskrila 61 and 62 of Grupal 6 Vento, as well as IAR-Erks from the newly formed Iskrila 45 of Grupal 4 Vento, together with the Ergs from ISK 53 and Fers from the Romanian Night Fighter Squadron, dived on the low-flying 4-engine bombers belonging to 5 USAAF bomber groups, the 44th, 93rd, 98th, 376th and 389th. The Americans lost in combat or on the way back 51 bombers. Only 89 reached their bases, of which only 31 were serviceable for a mission the next day. The Romanian pilots claimed 25 certain and probable victories for just 2 losses, 1 IAR-80B and 1 PFERK. According to Romanian statistics, IARs and Messerschmitt were confirmed as having shot down 10 Bs, with 2 probables. On 21 April 1944, IAR-Erks of the 1st, 2nd, and 6th Fighter Groups took off to intercept B-17 and B-24 bombers which were targeting the Bucharest marshalling yard. While attacking the bombers, the Romanian fighters were engaged at high altitude by the escorting P-51 Mustangs of the 31st Fighter Group. In the aftermath of the air battle, the AR lost 14 IARs and 11 pilots were killed, while the Americans reported 10 aircraft lost. On 10 June 1944, IARs took part in a major air battle when the USAAF attacked Ploieti with 38 P-38 Lightnings of the 82nd Fighter Group carrying 1 bomb each, escorted by 39 Lightnings of the 1st and 82 Fs. The IAR-Erks from Grupal 6, as well as the German fighters from IG-53 and 77, intercepted the large American formation. Romanian pilot Dan Visanti, commander of Group 6, recalled later. The USAAF lost 22 Ps on that day, of which 9 were shot down by the Ayers. The Romanians claimed 24 victories, suffering 3 losses. The Americans claimed 11 victories. The American account of this battle conflicts significantly with the Romanian one. Fighter pilot Herbert Stubhatch, who took part in the dogfight, wrote that his flight of 16 Ps, the 71st Fighter Squadron, was challenged by a large formation of Romanian IA fighters that he misidentified as Focke-Wulf-Ers. According to Hatch, the fight took place at and below 300 foot in a narrow valley. Hatch saw 2 IARs hit the ground after taking fire from his guns, and his fellow pilots confirmed 3 more kills from his guns. 3 of his victories were confirmed by gun camera, while the other 2 by his wingman, making Hatch an ace in a day. However, the outnumbered 71st Fighter Squadron lost 9 aircraft. The Americans never again repeated the P-38 dive bombing mission profile over Romania. But during 1944, USAAF aircraft appeared over Romania in more significant numbers. Many air combats occurred, and by the time of their last encounter with the USAAF on 3 July 1944, pilots of Group 6 Ventura had submitted 87 confirmed and 10 unconfirmed claims. Casualties among the Romanian fighter pilots quickly mounted to the 3 IAR groups, the 1st, 2nd, and 6th, in a period of less than 4 months, known as the American campaign, had at least 32 IAR pilots killed in action, including 11 aces. These losses exceeded the number of casualties suffered in the previous 2.5 years of fighting against the Soviets. Because of heavy losses, all IAI units were withdrawn from combat against Americans in July 1944, and IAR pilots started to convert to the more modern FERGs. Prepare yourself for an eye-opening discussion on surviving aircraft in the upcoming portion of this video. After the Soviet occupation of Romania, all remaining IARs were replaced with Soviet designs and scrapped. No complete original examples are known to survive. A static replica of the IAR-80 rebuilt post-war after the fall of communism and painted in its original colors was shown at the Mihail Kugel-Nysen Air Show near Constanta. The IAR-80 replica can be seen at the Romanian National Military Museum in Bucharest. Another IAR-80 static replica can be found at the National Aviation Museum at the defunct Piper Airport in Bucharest, which was rebuilt from IAR to seat trainer parts. As of 2017, few attempts have been initiated to produce an airworthy accurate replica of the IAR-80 based on existing factory documentation and recovered components. A flying IAR-80 is still to be seen. Since 2020, the Fly Again Volunteer Association is currently developing an airworthy replica of the IAR-80, which will be named IAR for Fly Again and will carry the board number 451, where the original production left off. Brace yourself for an enlightening exploration of fiction as we dive into its profound implications. The IAR-80 appears in the historical fiction book 80 Flights of a Not So Much of a Fighter Pilot by Clint Podyssey. Brace yourself for an in-depth analysis as we navigate through operators and its far-reaching implications. Royal Romanian Air Force. 1st Fighter Group received IARX aircraft in October 1943. 43rd Fighter Squadron. 63rd Fighter Squadron. 64th Fighter Squadron. 2nd Fighter Group. 65th Fighter Squadron. 66th Fighter Squadron. 67th Fighter Squadron, 50th Fighter Squadron. 3rd Fighter Group received IAR's aircraft in August 1942. 41st Fighter Squadron, 44th Fighter Squadron, 49th Fighter Squadron based at Turga. 4th Fighter Group received IAR's aircraft in July 1942. In early 1943 was equipped with IARX. 45th Fighter Squadron based at Setata Alb. 46th Fighter Squadron based at Setata Alb. 5th Fighter Group operated IARX aircraft. 51st Dive Bomber Squadron. 52nd Fighter Squadron. 53rd Fighter Squadron operated IAR's aircraft in late 1942. 6th Fighter Group started training on IAR's aircraft since 27 September 1941, and in January 1942 conversion to IAR-81 begun. 59th Fighter Squadron. 60th Fighter Squadron. 61st Dive Bomber Squadron. 62nd Dive Bomber Squadron. 7th Fighter Group received IAR's aircraft in October 1943. 56th Fighter Squadron. 57th Fighter Squadron. 58th Fighter Squadron. 8th Fighter Group received first IAR's aircraft in February 1941. In April 1943 was transformed into 8th Assault Group and equipped with Henschel's herbs. 41st Fighter Squadron. And Fighter Squadron received first IAR's aircraft in July 1941. 59th Fighter Squadron received first 6 IAR's aircraft in September 1941. 9th Fighter Group was formed in April 1942 and received IAR's aircraft. In April 1943 unit was equipped with FERGs. 47th Fighter Squadron. 48th Fighter Squadron. 56th Fighter Squadron Romanian Air Force post-war. Now, let's shift our focus to specifications IARC and embark on an intellectual exploration of its various dimensions. Specifications IARC. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an update from my channel.